I'm Darren Huvis with Par 4 Fitness, and today we're going to be talking about the foundations of golf fitness. So this is something that we could spend several hours on, but I want to give you this kind of a general breakdown on what we do and what goes through my mind when I'm addressing anyone physically, whether they're coming off of rehab up to a professional player. So really where I wanted to get started was with our function, strength, and perform program. So basically what we're going to be talking about is an overview of that entire program. How do we start in terms of assessments? What does that look like as we progress into function? And then how do we progress from a function to more of a strengthening phase, whether that's on our own or through group fitness programs. And then perform is how do I take that to the course? How do I get faster? How do I get more agile? So those are the things that we want to really address in this discussion on the webinar. And we're going to start off with basically testing. And we'll get deeper into this in other webinars here as well. I'm going to give you a complete breakdown of our testing. But for today, I'm just going to give you kind of bullet points. So when we go through a testing protocol with anyone that's new or a current client, we're looking at, okay, what's their health history? What are they trying to accomplish? What are their goals? How do they see themselves accomplishing those goals? And what are some strengths? What are some weaknesses? What are things that they're currently working on in their game? What's their current workout program? All of these things play a very important role in deciding, okay, what do we need to work on? How am I going to impact you the best? And how can we incorporate what I give you into your existing program, or how do we start from scratch? That's really what I see a lot of is people have a lot of question marks on what does golf fitness look like, and we're going to answer some of those questions today. So starting off with testing, when we go through the health history and everything I just mentioned, we're looking for basic movement patterns. So what we call the neurodevelopmental model, or that progression, is how we really develop throughout life. So some things I wanted to talk about here were when we're an infant, we're going through these steps. We're learning how to breathe properly. We're gripping things. We're tracking things with our eyes, and we're adapting to the environment. So we have these infantile reflexes where we're grasping for things, we're reaching for things, and then we move up to other limb motions. So we start to coordinate the hands with the legs and the arms with the legs, and that leads to rolling. It leads to crawling. And then we learn how to move from that crawling position, pulling ourselves up onto furniture. So these are things that I've seen with my son. And it's interesting, those steps. And sometimes they're skips, sometimes they're really nailed down, and others spend more time in crawling patterns or lying on their backs than others. Some kids walk faster than others, but we really go on this journey at different speeds. But overall, we're going to check off every one of these lists, and then once we transition to walking, that's when we start to learn athletic motions. That's how we get even more coordinated. And sometimes I'll take players through basic rolling patterns. You'd be surprised at how many people can't roll properly. And that leads to a lot of issues as we go throughout this neurodevelopment model. And being able to take a player back through the model, get them rolling, get them crawling, up to standing, that can have a very large impact on how they're moving as a golfer as well. So we're really trying to make you more athletic through that neurodevelopmental model, and going through our function phase. So what we want to then take a look at with our testing would be K-BEST. We're looking at how efficient are you moving energy up throughout the body. So if there's any leaks there or any movement inefficiencies, we're going to tie that back to your TPI test through your movement screen, through your health history, and we're going to come up with reasons. Okay, why are you moving this way? Why is this not as efficient as we like, or why is this certain segment not as fast as we like? Because there's certain swings that cause that to happen, but there's also movement discrepancies that cause that to happen as well. So we'll kind of sift through both of those and give you a clear picture on, okay, what's important, what's definitely something that we need to work on right away to solve any issues, but also to help streamline you to your goals a bit more effectively as well. So next I want to kind of get into the TPI test. And really what we're looking for here, is I'm just going to pull up my screen. So the TPI test consists of many different motions, but this is the baseline for what we want to do throughout the swing. So we're looking at this pelvic tilt test. Essentially what we're looking for is how well can you separate your pelvis from the lower half and also the upper half. So as you can see here, we're going to have some arching and some rounding of the spine, but we're really looking to see how well can you isolate that motion. And all of these are motions that we necessarily require throughout the golf swing, but it sure makes a lot of sense that if we can't do these motions, that there's really no way that they're just going to automatically pop into the golf swing. So I'm a big fan of TPI's model, breaking the swing down, looking at the motions, and then analyzing what those motions are. So next we go into pelvic rotation, torso rotation. We're looking at how well can you separate the lower from the upper and the upper from the lower. Can you create that separation? So I'm always looking at what do tour pros do that amateur players do not do. And tour players have a really high ability to separate the two from one another, what we call X factor. And Jim McLean termed that. But it's really the separation between the lower and the upper throughout the golf swing. The most powerful players in the world go through what we call downswing loading. So they maximize this separation in the downswing, which creates this stretch effect, and then they shorten it rapidly. So that creates a lot of speed, and you can see that the World Long Drive players have a really high swing speeds, but they tap into those stretch shortened cycles a lot more so than some amateurs do. And then we get into the overhead deep squat, which is a great assessment from the ankles all the way up through the shoulders. Toe touch, obviously looking at hamstring length, not necessarily the benchmark for overall mobility, although I find that most people in general tend to gauge their mobility off of the toe touch. And there's certain things that happen in the toe touch that we'll discuss a bit more in depth with further seminars that we'll introduce. We'll be going in depth into these assessments and what we're looking for. Next, we move on to the 90-90, which is looking at shoulder mobility. How far can you rotate back? But also stability. How much of that can you maintain as you bend forward onto the golf swing plane? Most of us are bent forward anywhere from 30 to 40 degrees, and it becomes much more difficult to externally rotate the shoulder in that position. So the more strength we have, the more mobility we have in the shoulder joint and stability around the scapula, we're able to create a very efficient loading pattern of both shoulders. Next, we go to single leg balance. We're looking at how well how good is your kinesthetic awareness. So we're looking at, okay, what's the ankle doing? What's the knee doing? What's the hip doing? Does it stay level? And how long can you hold it? So we do that with our eyes closed. Lat length test. We're looking at how well do you move into an overhead motion in this wall sit position. Lower quarter rotation. I do it a bit differently than what is shown here in the picture. I'll have the player lie on their back and we'll see what's the quality of range with internal and external rotation of the hip, both important in backswing and downswing, as well as the seated trunk rotation. So we looked at how well can you separate. This is going to show us how much could you potentially separate the lower from the upper. Thoracic spine rotation is very important in creating mobility in the golf swing. Next will be our bridge with leg extension. So we're looking at isolating one leg from another. How strong are the glutes? Cervical rotation. One thing that we really see a deficiency in with a lot of people is cervical rotation, and it's evident on the roads as well. People don't look over their shoulders; they're relying on the mirrors, and then they run into those blind spots. So it's cervical rotation is going to limit backswing rotation. Where does that visual field go once we hit that end range of cervical rotation, and what's the compensation that happens as a result of that? Next, we look into forearm and wrist motions. How well can you supinate, palms up, pronate, palms down? How much can you ulnar and radial deviate? And then how much can you flex and extend? And then another one is in this child's prayer position. How far can you reach the fingers up and the palms up from the floor? So it's indicative of overhead shoulder flexion in a gravity resisted motion. So I'm going to stop this share real quick. So how do we progress from the testing to training? We're looking at all of these categories on, okay, what do you test well in? What do you don't? And we're tying together the golf swing, your goals with what you do. We're taking videos of the swing. We're looking at what's the movement patterns that we just went through. How well do you go through that neurodevelopmental model? And what are some things that we can work on there? So rolling might be something that you do, and it seems like that might be simple, but the better you are at these simpler motions, the better athlete you eventually become. So we're looking at laying that foundation in the function phase, so we can then start to add some strengthening into that. So we nail down those movement patterns, and that's what we're looking for. So through the function phase, what we'll look to incorporate, I'll pull up my screen here again, will be basically this 4-step system. So in supported, what we're looking at is going through our neurodevelopmental model, either lying on your back or prone, face down, into more of a suspended position, which would be on all fours, going through cats, camels, bird dogs, things like that, even into like planking patterns. And then you go into stacked, which would be like your tall kneeling or lunging position. So when we progress to pulling ourselves up onto furniture as infants, that would be that stacked position until eventually we get into standing. So that's one side of things, and we're going to pair that up with basically feedback, demonstration. How well do you have that motion with the feedback, and then can you perform that motion with some resistance there as well? So it's basically going through those 4 models. So we might keep you on your back or prone rolling and basically just show you. So we're giving you feedback, we're giving you control, and then we'll have you demonstrate it. And then we may help you through that motion with some bands, things like that. And then we might start to resist it. We get even better with the motion, then we can start to add resistance through the motion with bands, or make it harder, have you try to roll over something with the same type of form that we're looking for with the testing. And we can go the same thing all the way up into standing. So we may change your stance position from feet together to a split stance to feet apart, and then progress it all the way up to single leg, where we're challenging balance, either statically without resistance, and then we're taking it to the next level there. So once we start to nail down these motions and we get a good capacity to really achieving those, but you're demonstrating it consistently, then we can move on to this strengthen phase. So when we do that, we're looking to again nail down those functional movement patterns on the neurodevelopmental model, and just making sure that that's something that's really solid for you. So even if you've got a good training age, you work out regularly, this might be something in your program that's been lacking. So adding in these functional foundation phases of our training can make your Olympic lifts better. It can make you faster. It can make you a bit more efficient on and off the golf course, because you've got these maybe not new motions, but you're just revisiting these motions that we haven't done in a while. So for example, I find that men have a really hard time skipping. It's something that they haven't done in so long, or maybe never did. I know when I first went through it, it wasn't something that I had done really since elementary school, in terms of how to skip. So we'll go forward, backwards, side to side. It makes us better movers in all planes, but we get that reciprocal pattern of the right arm working with the left leg and vice versa. So if we can create that type of motion from conscious to subconscious, when we're not thinking about it, we can hold a conversation and we can skip forward, we can skip backwards, we can skip sideways. You're not thinking about it. You're much more likely to take that motion into something that's athletic, whether it's golf, whether it's tennis, or whatever sport you play. It's something that's important in terms of a foundation. So function is something that we really program. It's something that you could do every day. It might be something that you incorporate as a warm up or a cool down. It's going to be lower intensity, lower loads, really minimal resistance. We might offer some feedback. But once we start to nail those down, we get into that strengthen phase. That's where we're going to start to add in some resistance. We're going to add in some endurance as well. So we know golf is a quick, explosive motion. It requires us tapping into our anaerobic systems, and our training should look very similar. So if we're doing 20, 25 reps of of exercises, we're not using that same energy system that we are throughout the golf swing. Now we might be encouraging some low intensity, low level strengthening there, but it's not at the same level that the golf swing demands. So just because you've gotten through rehab doesn't mean you're ready to get back out onto the golf course. We need to have that next level of strength in order to take you from that level and get you back out playing without any pain or discomfort, or most importantly, re-injuring it, because it sets you back that much more. So it's important to go from that function to the strengthen phase, and then onto the perform, where we start to layer on speed. So when we look at strengthening and transitioning to perform, we're looking at numbers based on how much are you squatting in relation to body weight, how much can you push, how much can you pull in relation to body weight. And once you start to get close to our objective numbers there, is when we can start to layer on some speed safely, because we've got a strong foundation. We've got the strength layered on top of that, and then we can start to look at speed. So things don't start to break down. What I find is most people looking to get into a golf program are looking at strengthen, or they go right to speed sticks and they're just looking to perform. They're trying to get faster. So they're layering on speed on top of dysfunction, painful movement patterns, and it's something that's just a recipe for disaster, really. So we've got to have the foundation. We've got to understand why we're doing the things that we are, and then we've got to progress through that pattern. One thing that I'll also say, golf fitness doesn't have to look like the golf swing for every exercise that you're going through. People love to go through like downswing or backswing motions on the cable. Granted, those do have their place, but we can have benefit just simply doing a bicep curl, getting stronger, doing resisted band exercises with the shoulder. It doesn't necessarily have to look like a golf swing to have the really good benefits that we see with other training as well. So there's a lot of different modalities that you can use to get better at golf and at golf fitness. And again, it's filling up that bucket that we talked about and creating a team. So we're looking to maximize the body so we can maximize the swing, and then we can start to look at equipment and getting the best equipment possible for our bodies and our newfound swing. So programs that we offer currently in the past has largely been private training, and it's something that's very efficient for getting a player ready to go out onto the course, and gives them a very consistent message from, okay, what do I need to do for warm-ups? It's something that we go through every time you come into the facility or at home. And then what do I do in terms of a cool down? And then what do I do in between? So we said function's something that you could do really every day if you wanted to. Strengthening phases are going to be a lot less depending on how you break it down. So if you're doing full body strengthening, maybe you're going through a circuit style training, that would be something that you could do, I would say max 3 times a week. But if you're breaking it up into maybe the lower body 2 days a week and upper body 2 days a week, and then you're going through maybe some higher intensity interval cardio 1-2 days a week, that can be something that you could do every day if you program it properly. It's just a matter of, okay, what are you going to commit to, and how do you transition basically what you were doing into something that's sustainable over time. So if you're going from 0 to, okay, I'm going to do this every day, most likely you're not going to have much success unless you're really driven. But I find it's best to take those steps up, just incorporating something that's maybe just 10 minutes long, be something that you can do every day. But strengthening, I would advise you going up to maybe two days to start and seeing how you feel, and then progressing from there. So that's basically the outline for our program. But also, I mean, what does golf fitness look like here at Par 4 Fitness, and how should it look like in some of the other programs that you see around the country as well? Maybe you go up north and work with someone else. So that's basically an outline for you to help make your decisions on, okay, what's my golf fitness program look like? What should I do for an assessment, and what are the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing in each phase that we talked about. So I want to thank you for joining us for this Foundations in Golf Fitness, and we look forward to you joining us for future webinars.